you're on.
I just wanted to follow up and check in and see how you've been encountering the advising fee now that we're a couple months in. So one issue I'm having is I'm trying to get a straight answer of how those funds are being used. And I'm interested because I now have ASBSU senators asking me in terms of representing honors and wanting more information. And they were told by Provost Buckwalter that 60% of the fees going to colleges and departments, 30% to non-degree granting programs, which is news to us. We have not heard that. And 10% staying in the provost's office. And then based on the dean's memo that Lynn shared, looks like actually about 60% is staying within the provost's office after departments give back 50%. And on top of that, PSA notes say that Alicia Estes noted that a large portion of the fee is going to pay for Salesforce licensing and implementation, and then to support new and continuing initiatives. So I just cannot get a clear answer on what the money is actually being used for. And I have more and more students asking, and I just wanted to check in with others and see if you have students asking. I know some of the deans have also heard from upset parents about this fee. And so just wondering what's going on in your world.
I can go for SPS. And I don't know if it's coming, what chunk is coming, where this is coming from, but I know that part of the advising fee is paying for the pre-law advisor that's supporting all majors across campus. And so that like I said, I don't know what slice or what chunk or where that's coming from, but I do know that that is something that that the provost is using some of that advising fee for.
I can go next, and Cohen.
I'm sorry, I have a question for Haley. The provost office is directly funding that, or they're sending advising funds to SPS and SPS is using the funds for that position?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's going to SPS, but the idea is that about 60% of pre-law students are not SPS majors. They actually come from outside of SPS. So I don't know exactly what portion of that advising fee is coming from like the SPS like chunk of money from that advising, or if it's coming from the chunk that's from the provost's office. So I can try to find out more. We're doing the hiring committee right now, so I can find out more for you, Brandy, if that would be helpful.
And Cohen, we're using part of our funds at least to hire another advisor. So as our programs are growing in mechanical engineering, I've got, I think, almost 500 advisees. So could use some help. And so we're hiring another advisor to help with mechanical engineering.
That's the same in COAS. I think we'll be able to hire another advisor in the upper division space, hopefully. And I know that we have been getting some concerns coming in to the departments about the fee from either parents or students. So Kelly Myers and I are actually in the process of sending out an email just to all of the advising partners throughout our college to have them forward any of that communication to us so that we can sort of compile that and have that presentable to the provost's office.
And David, what would the purpose of forwarding those communications to the provost office be?
I think just to if there is enough concern around that and sort of getting more direction, hopefully, from the provost office of how we can relay our messaging to students and parents who we're kind of getting the brunt of the anger from, right? So if we're able to collect that and present that this is what's coming in and these are the questions that we're getting, hopefully some just solid communication that we can share out.
Yeah, I think one of the things we would like to see is, you know, a clear and concise statement from the provost's office about exactly what's going on and how we're supposed to be presenting this to students and parents.
Is anyone aware of, I mean, besides what David just shared in terms of working with the dean's office to collect communications from parents, is anybody aware of their deans posing this question to the provost?
I was gonna say in Cohen, the advisor fee is kind of a drop in the bucket to our professional fees that we charge for upper division, which went from $35 to $45 per credit. So we had a messaging from all of our departments, messaging from the dean. We held the listening session and we thought 2 students showed up, but actually 1 student showed up because the other one was just there early for their class.
I thought you were going to tell me you served pizza or something and the other one
Oh
showed
no,
up for
I thought
pizza.
if we would have, maybe we would have got more than the 1.
So it doesn't sound as though, it sounds like there might be questions amongst advising leads, but it doesn't sound as though those questions, except maybe in David's case, have filtered up to their dean's offices, who might then forward those questions or concerns to the provost office.
I mean, we've, excuse my voice at the start here, but my voice is gone. We've had a lot of discussions with our associate deans about this. Just because of some of the, the complaints that students are bringing to us, but I don't think that those have moved beyond our dean's office. I guess while
Brandy, I'm not sure if any of this is helpful, Brandy.
I think it all seems like everyone is a little bit confused. And so I think it would be nice if we could at some point get a clear statement from the provost's office directed at our advising network about what this fee is being used for.
And do you have any ideas how to best, where those questions should come from? Who is best positioned to ask the question, I guess?
I think the deans would be the best people to ask. Andrew has shared some of our questions and concerns, but I don't know if other deans aren't asking, I don't know if it's enough to have one dean asking.
Any other thoughts on this for the good of the order? Mary, as the representative of pretty darn large college, what's the take on the advising fee over there?
I would say it's the same. So questions, a bit of confusion, so any clarity would be great. And sorry, I came into this conversation a little late, so I'm guessing we're talking about all things advising fee. Yeah, the last I had heard they were still trying to gain some clarity around what percentage was going to go to where, how it was going to be dispersed, and trying to understand maybe the algorithm behind it. And then I think the conversation that we had prior was that some of these funds could be used towards our peer support. But in terms of advisor fee questions, I haven't heard from any of the advisors recently since the beginning of the semester where students have brought it up.
I have a question for all of you. For those of you who've seen the funds land in your respective areas, where are they landing? Are they landing in your units accounts, or are they landing in an account controlled by the dean's office, which is then funneled to you? How is that working for you all?
Working in our office, they basically created a brand new account that goes for Kobe advising and shuffled our our sorry, I lost the word in my head. Our other account, shuffled that away.
Our dean told me that it's being dispersed in 4 increments, so it's like quarterly being dispersed. So it's making it hard to do like salary stuff with it. So they're that's the last I heard. I just talked to her about a week ago. So as far as like how it's being dispersed, I think there's still kind of a question as to how that's happening.
So do you know if it's going to be going straight to SPS's accounts, or
It's
is it
going
going
to
to?
some account in the dean's office.
I think we're the same. I'm not 100% sure where it's going to land, but it seems from my other conversations that it's dispersed through the dean's office somehow.
That's what I would have expected. So is Kobe here maybe the outlier, or is anybody else seeing new accounts being made for the advising fees to land directly in your unit? Matt, congratulations.
It doesn't feel like a prize.
Someone's living right.
Yeah.
I think the other thing we're sort of running into too is with our split advising model. Now some of the departments are like, well, where is our chunk of money in this advising fee? And so that is another whole can of worms that I don't even know how to explain, tackle, or even think about. So
Elizabeth, I'm not sure if you were in the room, but I flat out predicted that with COAS.
Well, of course, how could you not with, and then one department probably has 5, 2 faculty advisors, and then the next, department might have 10, and each of them have 2.5 people, and, I'm sure it's just.
But they'll
it's
all
for fun
hire
for
at
you,
least
David.
one if they can get their hands on the funds, right?
I just don't want to think about it.
Yes, I from the beginning was also wondering about what happens with faculty advisors.
It goes back to the magical question of who's an advisor on this campus. And then caseload management and, all the fun things.
Yeah. So in an attempt to answer maybe 1 or 2 questions for Brandy, I think we've come up with about another dozen. And I can't help but think that probably the people best positioned to be able to start to get some answers are the deans. So I guess if there's a recommendation to come out of this, at least from me, definitely pose your questions to the deans, and if you haven't already, and see if they can get some clarity from the provost office on those things. None of these questions are surprising. I think we all pretty much anticipated most, if not all of them. And I'm not surprised at all that it's not abundantly clear yet. One, how much are we going to get? I say we, collective we, let alone individually by unit, but how will it be dispersed? Haley, that's interesting that it sounds like in your area it's going to be quarterly. There's probably just as strong an argument that it could be in a lump sum as of day 10, right? For each semester. So yeah, or maybe it'll work out like that for SPS, but it could be a lump sum on day 10 for another unit. I'm not sure to what extent consistency in protocols or procedures regarding the fees are necessary or helpful. Definitely not our call. But yeah, I guess I would encourage everybody to talk with their deans about questions that they'll have. I'm certain the deans are interested in clarity as well. Okay, so we do have our colleagues from SPS, so why don't we sort of jump around and make this a free form agenda and turn it over to Amanda and Haley.
Hey, so I think some of you know, basically mine's pretty short. I am actually leaving Boise State for 8.5 years. My last day is going to be the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm not really working that week. So really next week is mostly my last week. I am going to stay home full time with my son. So I'm not taking another position. Well, I am, but now I'm not getting paid and have to work 24/7 and don't really have paid time off, and he's pretty bossy. But either way, I think it'll be it'll be hard, but a good change. And so that is happening. And then my role, I believe, I didn't hear the final word, but I think my role has transitioned officially to Haley at this point.
Yes. So November 26th, the day after Amanda leaves, I officially start in her role. So that's exciting. We're probably not going to be hiring a new advisor for a while, just kind of while the dust settles with everything. Because we are hiring that new pre-law advisor, trying to train 2 new people at one time, which is too much for me to handle. So right now we're gonna have 3 like advisors for the school public service, and then we'll have the pre-law advisor that's starting in January. And that pre-law advisor is going to be for anyone that wants to go to law school. So if you have someone in your programs, please tell them to keep their major. Most important thing, keep their major. But they can add on pre-law, so that way that new advisor can see them, make sure they get the emails that the students need. So yeah, so we have some changes happening in SPS. We're very sad to lose Amanda, but we're also excited for kind of the new changes, new updates. You know, we're constantly figuring out what the best thing is. And so you might hear some more updates from us depending on when we decide to hire a new advisor. It probably won't be until summer or something like that for us, but yeah, it's kind of exciting.
Just as a heads up, we're going through the hiring process right now for a new advisor, and we have 79 applicants. So maybe, I don't know what's happening out there in the job market, but that seems like a very, very high number. So you might have a really good pool coming up.
That sounds like pre-pandemic numbers. We would get anywhere from 70 to 90 applications for an advising position before the pandemic. And then during the high pandemic, we were happy if we got 15.
How many of the 79 met minimums?
Well, I wasn't getting into that, but
I'm just curious.
Actually,
Great
majority
question.
of them, there's not too many that, there's maybe a handful that have not. So yeah, a lot of people coming from like the education world, elementary education world.
yeah, that's definitely a pandemic related phenomenon.
And I
I'm
also wanted,
I'm gonna head out. I have off today. I just wanted to pop in and say kind of my goodbyes. My boss is about to wake up. I can see on the camera, so I'm gonna go go handle him. So it was great working with you all. I will, like I said, have my email until the 25th. But yeah, I am headed out. Okay.
Well, enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I was just also going to mention, I might have to head out early too. Like I mentioned, we were doing hiring for pre-law. I'm literally going across campus to an interview at 3:30. So if I look like I'm on my phone later, that's because I'm like on my phone walking to the ERB. So just so you know, if I drop off, that's why.
I was just gonna jump in and say when we reviewed the applications for our admin position, the majority of those were coming from K through 12. They were teachers.
Well, I'll just share if anybody's seeing any applicants, we're reopening our budget office coordinator position. Unfortunately, our search did not pan out. And so we'll be reflying it here shortly. I anticipate that it will be open until the end of November. And so if there's any folks that you see, oh, would be a great fit, please refer them to our office. We'd love to review.
Okay, Jose, you ready?
Sure. I'm really sorry about that. Just that this other meeting ran in a little late.
No worries. So why don't we start with maybe you introducing yourself to the group, even though I know many in the meeting have met you, and then we can all do our quick introductions for Jose. So Jose, take it away.
Sure. Thank you so much. Again, so sorry, y'all. Usually try to be better on time, but definitely meetings from in-person to Zoom. I still haven't figured out that magic trick to find balance between both of them. But Jose Lee Perez, he, him, his. I'm the director of first year experience with COAS, but more so on a larger scale, really working closely with Susan on what does a first year experience look like at Boise State for all of our students. What are these kind of shared experiences? What kind of culture do we want to create for this? So it's a cross kind of collaboration, and kind of the onsets of that conversation really started many students, most students touch a course in COAS. And this is kind of where the rationale started of putting the position there. But at the end of the day, there's so much intersection, there's so much overlap. And there isn't a guarantee, honestly, by the end of the first year. I've heard students may change their majors pretty frequently here. So it's that understanding that there's not this guarantee that a student will stay in one college. We want them to, and maybe that's an end goal, but it's really making sure that they find their space at the end of the day. But prior to that, just to kind of give you a little bit more context about me, I came from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee. So if you ever make that drive with pets, it's probably going to be about 35 to 36 hours. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, mostly, but I got to know all the rest areas along the way. So if you have a trip like that planned, I'm happy to tell you where to go and where not to go. But my kind of experience and focus has been access and student success. That those transactional spaces of helping students, making sure they have all the operational needs to be a student on campus, and making sure that they are prepared to start their courses. And that's where this kind of niche of a first year experience and where my really values align is what can we do to empower students to start asking those questions appropriately, and also engaging in dialogue that they can start maybe discovering more about their interests, whether it's in a major, whether it's in a career, whether it's just those social communities that they want that first year, whether they're a traditional first year or even a transfer student or non-traditional student. What can we use in that time frame to really kind of elevate their experience here and utilize that time as a launch pad to whatever kind of success ventures, whatever scholar they want to become while they're with us and forward. So it's a little bit about me. I'll definitely pass it over to you all. I know looking at the faces, some of you look familiar, others not so much, but I'm excited to have an opportunity to learn more about you too.
So I'll just jump in really quickly. Tomas Baeza, advising an academic support center, and I'll pass it on to Anel.
Hi, I'm Anel Friends. I'm with the Honors College. I should pass it along. How about David?
You know me, Jose. Jose and I got hired on the same day. We did our onboarding together. So yeah.
Who's next, David?
Sorry. Elizabeth, go for it.
Hello. I mean, I'm not going to waste any time. We have had plenty of opportunities and we will continue to do so.
Who's up, Elizabeth?
I think I would have caught on by now. I'm so sorry. Lynn.
Lynn Olson, College of Engineering Director, and Jose came and talked to our group of our advisors already, so we're excited to keep working with you. Totally forgot. Mary.
Hi, Jose. Mary Crowell with Health Sciences, and we'd love to have you come to one of our staff meetings and introduce yourself to our team. And that would be Larissa.
Hi, I'm Larissa Sampson. I work over in Extended Studies and am the Assistant Director of Advising there. And I'll pick on Matt.
Jose, we've met, you came to one of the meetings already, Matt Stewart, Kobe, and I'll pass it on to Brandy.
Hi, Jose. I'm Brandy. I'm the Associate Director in the Honors College. And Haley, I think you are maybe last here.
Yes. Hi, Jose. We've been in a couple meetings, but and you also met with Amanda a little bit with her before she left. So yeah, I'm in SPS. I am taking over Amanda's job in a couple weeks when she stays home with her little baby Isaac.
So Jose, the agenda is yours at this point.
Sure. Thank you all so much. I'm actually excited that I've met most of you already, or have had at least some sort of dialogue. So trying to make my way, and if I haven't, my release, and I can say this, advising is such a central part to the first year experience, to the onboarding experience for students. I know I've been in different dialogues with everyone of what this kind of looked like. And just that's really one of my biggest goals, is understanding more of what the culture is at Boise State in terms of that advising experience for a first year student. And when I say first year, I should probably expand on that. My approach and view of a first year, and I've kind of alluded to this already, is their first year at Boise State. That to me doesn't, if it's your traditional high school going to college, you're not a veteran, you're going from service to civilian life, what are we doing in that transition? Transition is honestly the biggest point of that first year for anyone, and how are we helping them acclimate? The example that I use is even our own onboarding into our current positions or our first time position into this university. There's usually a sequence or a series of experiences that we use to help us set a success or name these are success markers. And what to me that translates to students is advising. Those are one of those success markers, because it's those spaces that we get to sort of help students and how navigate with them in their journey of figuring out a major, if they're an exploratory student trying to identify, or maybe they're already in a college and they're just starting to have differences in values or differences in approaches of maybe this isn't exactly the major that I want to do, or worst comes to serve, this isn't the institution that I want to be at. How are we helping them transition overall? So one, I guess, question, and I would just kind of love to open-ended. I think I have maybe about 10 minutes or so with you all, and this is just open feedback to me for you all, because I really am in this kind of stage of just anecdotally collecting information. And I would just
You
love to
easily
know,
have
and I think
another
Lynn,
20 minutes, Jose.
Oh, 20. Okay, I must have looked at it incorrectly then. That's great, because I have a lot more questions and I will definitely utilize as much as I can. But I'd love to know, what are some highs and lows around a first year experience from your specific areas? Like if there's this visionary thing that you would be able to accomplish or really hope for that your first year students know, what is that? And then likewise, is there a pain point from like the advising world or advising space that if we could solve it or work towards helping, what would that be? And I know I've had different conversations, but I think this is a great opportunity to just kind of bring all those messages together again, and just hear that.
I'll jump in. Randy laughs because she knows I always do this. I think one of the things that we've had a lot of conversations about in the past is first year students are completely lost in a university system. They don't understand why we have colleges. Aren't I going to Boise State University? What do I need a college for? They don't understand credit hours. They have absolutely no clue. I'm signing up for 18 credit hours. Why are you telling me that's too many credit hours? Because they have no idea what that actually means time-wise for them. They don't understand our jargon. They don't, and we're really, really bad about explaining our jargon to them. So there's a lot of just, I don't think that we do a great job of onboarding them into, okay, here's the difference between high school and college. And I don't think they understand the system at all. And that then keeps on presenting problems as you go down the lines. So.
No, that's really helpful. It's I can't remember how I've heard it, the operational readiness of being a college student. Honestly, it's an expected process, whether they have to go through verification in the financial aid world, submitting the application, orientation. There are logistics and steps that they have to go through. But then when I really think about it, if we're thinking about it from an equity lens, if equity gaps is our focus as an institution, is that blanket assumption that we have done enough to actually help those students who maybe have those similar questions. I was one of those students, maybe some of you all were too, that the fear of, and I've named this before in other conversations, how are we championing students for them to start exploring, to say it's okay to have these specific types of questions, to not know, but we can't help you. We can't be an actual resource for you unless you are actually asking those questions. So my biggest approach does come into how are we advocating for them? How are we encouraging them to advocate for themselves? To then hopefully they start taking advantage more of these resources. That's where to me that the onboarding should focusing on is empowering them to believe in what the successful student at Boise State looks like, and that they can become that and will become that through these kinds of steps if they continue through it.
So I'll just throw out a couple random responses to your questions. A high point from our experience with, I guess, technically first year, but it sort of goes beyond that, is we just wrapped up some torturous research on major declaration stability of undeclared students. So we compared students who came in undeclared versus those who came in declared. And the research question was, what is the major declaration stability of each group, i.e., which one is more likely to stay in the major once they've chosen a major? And our data from the students that we were able to narrow down and finally get some usable data, and not joking, it took 5 years to get this. And our initial findings are that students are somewhat more stable in their major declaration after having entered Boise State as an incoming freshman undeclared. So the gap isn't earth-shattering. The gap isn't such that I think that the provost office and student affairs are going to go running around changing paradigms at Boise State, but there is zero negative impact and arguably a positive effect, although you can never prove causation, for a student to come in undeclared. So if anything, I think we're working towards dispelling the myth that if you come in undeclared to Boise State, you're behind the 8 ball. You're not. You're doing actually quite well. And a pain point, I'll just pick one randomly out of the air. I sure would love it if students showed up at orientation with all the stuff we need at the ready. That would be just wonderful. And I think that's one of the areas where, and that's not a Boise State thing, just higher ed falls down. And the secondary ed system is not ready to help us out. And so we just have a hard speed bump in that regard every time. And I just systemically don't know how we fix that. So that's just a random complaint. But overall, the good news around here is that it does not hurt to be undeclared, and it might even help.
Yeah, that's interesting. There was an Inside Higher Ed article that I read of just championing more of that exploratory space, whether if they have time. That's really the caveat, if they have time to do that. And if we're thinking about a traditional first year, for sure. But I'm seeing more and more, at least with the students that I was serving beforehand, of our transfer students not knowing, but either already having too many credit hours accumulated. It's not to say for all colleges or all majors, but what the distinction between that, if we can take advantage of that period. So I'd love to learn more, Tomas, about that data that you collected.
So would I. The data,
Yeah.
it was awful getting the data. And we didn't break it down by major too, right? Because common sense would say that somebody coming in with, not even college level math coming in undeclared, I don't know that we're going to be able to say that that student wasn't delayed by coming in undeclared if they end up wanting to be engineering, for example. I don't think the data would support that. But across the board, it looked pretty promising. But yeah, we'd be happy to talk with you more about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Friday morning.
Yep.
We're having
Which I am glad I can add, thanks to Elizabeth and Zoe with the kind of new student orientation committees, that we are working towards that, which is exciting because I think that I've heard the stigma, we don't like the word required in certain circumstances. I'm a counter to that belief because to me, required means it sets an expectation. There's a level between when it becomes a barrier, but there's a level when it actually contributes to reaching something, because we are expecting them to become a successful student. And with that comes expectations. And so I'm curious to unpack what that narrative is at Boise State. I'll probably continue to learn more, but in that orientation, that onboarding experience, demystifying, destigmatizing what required means. So I'm excited that that's already happening. Maybe even just with changing the language of how we're showcasing this is something you do need to do to be successful in your orientation process and your onboarding process. So curious to see how hopefully there's some positive benefits that come from that initial layer to this conversation on that. Because I agree. Having them come with the right resources to help us do and support them as best as possible, I think would be a game changer. At that even onsets of not having to say, well, we can't do this yet when you bring this. It's just giving them that customer service, if you will, if I use that language, to make sure that they're feeling like they're valued and identified with their experience here.
I'll throw out another pain point. Totally echo what Tomas said around resources and having students be prepared for when they're and what they need so that we can best support them on their journey. But also I would just say university-wide course availability, big one. It's tough, especially, and I would say some colleges feel it a little earlier than others, but for our college, there's a lot of majors that are prescribed curriculum and they go in a pretty prescribed sequence. And so when courses are at capacity, and then we're looking at alternatives and those courses are at capacity, and then it halts their sequence or delays their timeline, then we get some pretty frustrated students and families. And that starts from the get-go.
Thanks for sharing that, Mary. Yeah, the one topic, and I can't remember who I was speaking with, but yeah, it's just even the curriculum itself, changes in curriculum, course selection is a pain point for advising, what that looks like. And then sometimes advisors are the ones taking the heat. I've come to realize advisors are so central to student support, to the student success overall, that I'm curious to see of how much, this might be the word, like I know all of our advisors want to do everything that they can to help our students, but it's taking away from the point of advising, which is that matriculation into what they're trying to do in these 4 years in their academics. Like we want to be the support person, but there's a difference between the expectation of this is what you're supposed to be doing versus I just want to be there for you as my student. So the capacity, of what all is falling onto an advisor's shoulders to support students. I'm very curious to unpack that a lot more, just to see where that kind of is, and is there anything that we can do? I don't know. I can tell you one thing that I'm very interested in is looking into just grant opportunities to really focus on infrastructure around the first year. One of the topic areas that could be it is advising, coaching, academic coaching models. I know there was previous ones here, as I've mentioned these in different conversations, but I keep flipping back to infrastructure, is probably the biggest pain point for a lot of what we do. And we do wear many hats here, I think, and we want to, but there's that point where our well-being is being affected, the well-being of our students, the support that we're providing to our students. So just kind of starting to unravel all of those different layers to see what's there. I think that's my first priority, is what is here, before starting to say, let's create or change anything. I don't have any power to change anything, but what I can say is this is not really helpful to us as the practitioners doing the work. And it's not benefiting as much as maybe we're thinking for our students. Maybe it is, but what else can we be doing? I'm always looking at what else can be done, and kind of elevating that kind of approach in our work at the end of the day. If anyone doesn't have any other thoughts, do you all have any questions for me? Anything that I can clear up? I know my hope is to really take this next, I'll call it quarter until December, and just kind of start putting together a lot of good work has already happened at Boise State within the last year since the conversation of the SART plan of what we're really trying to do. I'm very clear that the first year experience is a priority. It's a priority for everyone in every college, I think. And now I'm curious, what does this mean though for Boise State? Like, is there a tactic, an approach, the how, if you will, of how we're all going to come collectively? Not to say that I'm taking away autonomy, because that's not the purpose here. We are a decentralized institution. We have an approach to how we support our students, but is there something that we can do that becomes a shared experience for all of our students? One thing I'm extremely interested in, and I have the most experiences, it's an asset-based framework. It's a strengths-based framework, which literally is empowering students to acknowledge what they bring into the table. And honestly, I think it might contribute to some of these conversations of, in order to be successful, I need to do this. It's adding that layer to it. And to me, that Clifton Strengths is where I come with. That's the lane that I previously did, and empowering students through that. But to me, that also translates to self-efficacy and something that we can actually say of, can we move that needle and that self-belief to when they are experiencing a challenge, when they are experiencing a question that they don't know how to answer, they have the capacity and knowledge as to how to approach that. And exploring what that could be, like what is the centering piece for all of us around a first year that we can really catapult ourselves to say, this is how we're championing the first year experience. This is how we're championing all of our new students when they come to Boise State. But yeah, just with the last couple of minutes, do you all have any questions for me?
Jose, I have a question, and I'm not sure if there's a clear answer, but I understand COAS initiating, I won't call it an initiative, but understanding that first year overlaps with its operations significantly enough to have a director of first year initiatives. What is the relationship between your position and the provost office now that there's a dotted line relationship? What is the provost office's expectations and vice versa of that link?
I can say that, so what I've been challenged with is kind of naming what our priorities are around a first year experience. So when I say that, the hat that I'm putting on is a Boise State hat. It is not a College of Arts and Sciences hat. And that's why it's so important to me. I think I've emailed most colleges. I hope I didn't miss anyone. But just to really start all of the conversations with every single college, every single person, which really means the student life, student involvement, all our, even faculty, our students themselves, of that, because it is a dotted line between me being situated in COAS, but at the same time, the charge and ask for my role when it was created is a Boise State first year experience. So that is where Susan, those active dialogues with Susan and the provost office will continue to happen, because it is something that as I come up with anything, or if I start seeing pockets of conversations or topics that we see as a priority, my two directions right now are of course going to Leslie and COAS, because that is where I currently report, but it's also going to Susan to say, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing for our students, for our needs to support our students around the first year. So it's kind of like a dual report. I'm not on paper dually reporting, but in practice I am, because these are the two spaces that really are contributing to the first year experience, to student success at Boise State, and I think are the two bigger voices, at least initially, where the conversations were started, and which is why the director role kind of landed where it is right now under COAS.
Any other questions for Jose? Okay, Jose, thanks for coming. I hope you enjoy possibly the last outdoor Zoom meeting you'll enjoy until maybe April.
You know, it's a little cold. I'm hiding my hands behind my
Yeah,
shirt, but just
it ain't cold compared to what it's going to be like in 2 months.
Well, I'm looking forward to the cold, so I will say that. But thank you all so much. Mary, yes, for sure. I want to connect with you, with everyone else as well, just to kind of continue these dialogues. I hope to continue to have these dialogues, because I mean, that's the collaboration piece I think is so important, and making sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm excited what we do. I'm excited to be here, but thank you all so much for your time, and stay warm and dry, whatever. Bye.
All right, thanks. So there's only one more agenda item, and that shouldn't take but a couple of minutes. Anybody have anything in the miscellaneous column that they want to share with the group? No? Okay. So I guess with that, we're heading towards the conclusion of the final fall 23 small UAN meeting. This is where we pass the torch to Marion Health Sciences, who will coordinate next semester's meetings. All Mary,
We need an appointment.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll look for a time to schedule maybe a half hour with you to just talk about the administrative process. It's pretty easy. And since it's a rotating convener model, format can change. Things, I mean, we can definitely talk, and I guess I'm saying all this for the good of everybody, because this will touch you at some point directly. But Mary and I can talk about what I've done, and then we can definitely encourage positive change to better meet the group's needs over time with adjustments in what we do and how we do it each semester. That I think is a good part of the rotating convener model. I do want to honor that we committed to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 meetings in the fall, 2 meetings in the spring, 2 meetings summer. Sorry, I take it back, 3 meetings in the fall, because it's August usually, kind of start back up September and then November. So it's 3 for fall, 2 for spring, 2 for summer. And depending on what's going on in the summer, that might end up being 1 for summer. But I think we're technically on the hook for 2 in the spring. So Mary and I can talk with that in mind. Any questions about the passing of the torch at this point?
Just thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, then why don't I go ahead and do this?